Just 3 rounds to go in the URC and it's beginning to get serious. My name's Mark, let's talk rugby. Every game is crucial now for those chasing those playoff places and for the teams looking to get home advantage as well. So we're going to go down through each of the games, just talk a little bit about them, have a look at the form, the usual stuff, and just, with regards to where the teams are in terms of actually making the playoffs or not. So I'm going to start with Friday's game. So Friday, May 10th, 7:35 kickoff. We have 2 games, the first of which is the Dragons versus the Stormers. This is 15th versus 5th. It's at Rodney Parade. You can apparently catch it on Premier Sports, but I normally just watch all the URC games on URC TV. So 15th versus 5th, Dragons, way down there, bottom of the table, basically battling away with Zebre to avoid the wooden spoon in the competition. Stormers, they have an outside chance of making a home quarterfinal, but more important for them is that they need to maintain their position because there's 6 points between the Stormers, who are in 5th place, and the Lions, who are down in 11th place. So if miracle of miracles, the Dragons actually beat the Stormers in this one, that would be a huge blow to them, and they could see them even dropping out of the playoff places. So Stormers, they're going to come and deliver in this one. You would expect them to beat the Dragons. Honestly, like Dragons, they've got only a couple of wins this season, right? They got 3 wins this season. So compare that to the 9 from the Stormers. So you'd expect the Stormers, although in fairness to the Dragons, in the last kind of few rounds, we've seen their performance picking up. And we see that a lot with teams that are kind of, you get into that kind of middle part of the season where you have teams down the bottom and they feel like there's nothing really left to play for in the league for the season, and maybe performances drop off. Then you get to this part of the season where it's more for those teams, it's more about finishing well to get momentum into next season and preparing for next season as well, so they can do better than they did this season. So you can see a bit of an uplift in performance because of that, but I don't think we're going to see enough of an uplift for the Dragons to beat the Stormers. In terms of the form for the two teams, then Dragons have won 2 of their last 7. They've lost the last 2 on the bounce. Stormers have won 5 of the last 7, but they've been a bit patchy form wise. The last 5, they've won 3 of those 5, so not like in amazing form, but still it's been enough for them to start moving up that table. There is a bit of daylight between themselves and the Bulls ahead of them, though, as we said. So probably looking for a bonus point win here, honestly, to keep that pressure up on the Bulls and Munster ahead of them, and even possibly Leinster, if Leinster do slip up again before the end. But most people probably say Leinster won't, but we've been wrong in the past about things like that. So for the Dragons, as I said, they're 1 point ahead of Zebre. So for them, maybe try get a losing bonus point out of the game, or even if it turns into a try fest, just get the bonus point try out of it. Maybe lose 40 odd points to 20 odd, but still get your 4 tries out of it. That wouldn't be too bad for them, because when you look at it, they're averaging just a fraction over a point per round. So if they don't score a point in this round, they will be averaging exactly a game point a round after 16 games with 16 points. So gotta maybe try to get. I think if they get another couple of points before the end of the season, it's probably going to be enough to prevent Zebre from overtaking them, because Zebre probably, if they do, it'll be on bonus points. I can't really see another Zebre win before the end of the season, but again, it's possible. But let's come back to this game. So my prediction for this one is Stormers to win with a bonus point, but Dragons to at least have a decent performance. Okay, on to the next game then. Also 7:35 kickoff on Friday. This is Edinburgh versus Zebre. It's at the Hive Stadium. It's 9th versus 16th. So Edinburgh, one of those teams, chasing the Stormers, and again, playing a team in the bottom two, and you're, especially in this case, Edinburgh at home, whereas the Stormers are away. But Edinburgh at home, you've got to be looking at a bonus point win, and even a 4-point win for Edinburgh would be seen as points dropped, I think, in this one. That's no slight on Zebre. I think Zebre's performances this year at home have been, a big step up from last year in terms of consistency. We saw them last year, give some teams a few scares, including Leinster earlier on in last season. But away from home, they haven't, got to the level of Benneton being able to produce away from home. So it means generally when you see them go, taking on someone outside of Italy, then you're thinking it's probably going to be, almost certainly going to be a win for the home team, but probably going to be a bonus point win for the home team. So Edinburgh, that's going to be their goal, I think, for this one. Zebre, I think, unlike the Dragons, I don't think that, there was much of a chance of getting a losing bonus point. Again, it could be the 4-try one because Edinburgh like to, throw the ball around, but it was a tighter game. Edinburgh are probably going to end up winning by, somewhere between 10 and kind of 15, 16 points. And Zebre in that scenario probably get a couple of tries, right? And they don't get any bonus point out of the game. So it's almost counterintuitive almost that they'd want the game to be more open so they could potentially just get 4 tries themselves. And again, the same kind of scenario where Edinburgh run up a big score, but Zebre get enough tries to get a bonus point. So we'll have to see what happens there. I don't think any team, though, would honestly go out with that idea of, we're going to lose by a lot, but at least we'll get a bonus point out of it. So I don't think that's going to happen. But let's look at the form book. So Edinburgh, they've won 5 of the last 7, which is excellent for them. Again, I talked about it in the last few videos that Edinburgh really dropped off badly on the run-in last year and missed out on the playoffs and Champions Cup. Now, they've got a chance here to, again, they're in 9th place, so they're just out of playoff places. And you've got to think that if they win this one and get a bonus point, they're going to leap up into those playoff places. 5 out of 7 for them. Zebre haven't won any of their last 7. It's a long time since they got that one win as well. But Edinburgh, out of the last 4, they've won 2 in a row, but they lost 2 in a row before that as well. But still, at home at Hive Stadium, I'm expecting a bonus point win for Edinburgh in that one as well. Okay, so those are Friday night games. Let's go on to then Saturday. So Saturday early kickoff is, for me, probably the game of the round. Bulls in 4th place versus Glasgow Warriors in 1st place. So, you're not going to get, 2 higher ranked teams locking horns this week. So this one is at Loftus Versfeld, and again, it's on Premier Sport. I think most of the games are on Premier Sport, I think. But this, I think, for both of these teams could be season defining. Warriors, if they get to win, suddenly that 1st place, retaining it is a very realistic prospect for them, because a lot of people are expecting, well, Leinster are just going to win their last 3 games and Warriors are going to drop one in there for Leinster, are going to overtake them. But a win in this game suddenly challenges that perception, right? And sets them up with at least a chance of retaining that spot. The Bulls, for them, they've got 2 things on mind. Like, obviously, they slipped down the table, with that, that defeat against, who was against Munster, right? And now, you're thinking, before, like they were kind of looking up at Leinster and Warriors and in that mix, and a win in this one, and they're back in that race again, right? Because if they win this one, and even just with, let's say, 4 points and deny Glasgow any kind of bonus point, then they would move on to 55 match points, and Warriors would be on 58, so it'd be just 3 points between them. But if they lose, then Stormers, who were expecting to get a bonus point win, would then potentially close to within 1 or 2 points of them, depending on whether the Bulls got a losing bonus point or not. So there's a huge amount riding on it for both of these teams. Glasgow, that chance to basically be top seeds all the way through and potentially get their hands on some silverware would be fantastic for a squad who have threatened to win something, but never delivered on the big occasion. So this is a big occasion for them now, where they've got to stand up, and they do actually have to deliver in this one. The Bulls, as I said, depending on which way it goes, either they're back in that mix for potential top of the table, or suddenly they're the ones that that pack who are so close behind, who are so closely packed behind them, as it were. All of them could suddenly be within striking distance of the Bulls. So huge game for both of these teams, and I think because of that, it's going to be a fantastic watch as well. If we look at the form, then, so Bulls, they've won 5 of the last 7, which is really good form. But Glasgow have won 6 of the last 7, and those 6 have been 6 on the trot as well. So a long time since Glasgow have tasted defeat. The Bulls, they won last time out, but they had that loss to Munster previous to that, like the first time they lost to a European team at Loftus, and now potentially they could, that record, or not record, but it could be now 2 teams who've performed that feat. So Bulls absolutely will not want that to happen, and because of that, I'm expecting Bulls to really go for it and restore some pride against what is a top team, and a Bulls win. And I'm thinking game could go 2 ways, right? Because the Bulls, we know, have 2 styles of play. We've seen them where they can play it really tight and the backs never really get a look in. And at times then that really does kind of hamper them, because there's times where they're getting the big men to run, into contact, and they have like numbers out wide, but nobody looks up to actually spread it. So you could have that style of Bulls, but then the style of Bulls that I prefer is the one that brings all of that, brings the great set piece, brings huge contact, great carries, lots of physicality, real threat at the breakdown, but also remembers they have a fantastic backline as well. And when that Bulls turn up, you're in for a show. And given the way that the Warriors kind of have something similar in that, like, Glasgow, they like to spread the ball around, but their driving maul is a huge weapon for them as well. I'm potentially thinking we're going to see a mix of the two, not one style or the other. So we're going to see parts of the game where it's tight and parts of the game when it's open, and it's about who handled those period best. And I think that the Bulls, are going to be, just in this particular game, I'm not saying overall, but just this particular game, I think they're going to be more clinical. I think they're going to take more of the chances. I think we're going to see the Bulls, they're brilliant on turnover. I think we're going to see a couple of turnover tries from the Bulls as well that will turn what was a tight game into what will look like almost certainly a Bulls win. That's my prediction anyway. But Glasgow could turn up and just do what they've done for 6 games in a row and just get themselves another win. And that's what I'm talking about. That's the test now for this Glasgow team. This is where they really need that win. It's where they have to be super clinical. It's where, mentally they've got to be right on it. There can't be any, jitters at the start that give the Bulls a lead, or silly decisions or errors towards the end when they're trying to either come back or seal the victory. So, a huge mental challenge for Glasgow, obviously a huge physical challenge for both teams as well. But I think the Bulls are just going to about shade this one. Okay, so that's our early kickoff. Then we have our 3:05, and we got 2 games. So the first one is Scarlets versus Ulster. So this is 14th versus 7th. It's at Parky Scarlets. So Scarlets at this stage, another one of those teams who are kind of playing for, basically building up to next season, right? Trying to finish the season well. They're still in that scrap actually with the Dragons and Zebre. But it feels, it's weird because they're only a point ahead of the Dragons, but it feels like they're somewhat removed from it simply because these teams don't score that many, don't get that many match points. So a point can actually, 2 points ahead of Zebre can feel like a lot with only 3 games to go. So something has to change in the dynamic for the 2 bottom teams to kind of put a little more pressure on Scarlets, I think. And I think Scarlets as well are going to pick up, I feel like they will pick up more points than the other 2 by the end of the season. Whether that is losing bonus points or they get the odd win, I'm not sure yet. But I just have that feeling for them. And we know about the Scarlets where, they can produce some absolutely scintillating attacking rugby, and then they can be absolutely abject and all in the same game, and all within the span of a half of a game even. You can see them doing that kind of seesaw type thing, which as a Scarlets fan, it shows you the potential that's there, but also all of the problems that are there as well that need to be fixed. And hopefully for next season they can work on that. But let's come back to this season. So they're playing against an Ulster team. There's been a lot of speculation about, whether this coach or that coach is coming in, whether Richie Murphy is going to be offered the permanent position. Personally, I'd like to see Richie Murphy get the job, simply because I don't see why you would take someone who's successful at, under 20 level for Ireland, take them out of that position, move them to Ulster for a few months, and then they're out the door and they're out of your system as a coach. That just doesn't make sense to me at all. So for that reason, alone, I'd like to see him getting a decent shot at this. So get a contract for whatever many years it is, 2 or 3 years, and let's see how he does with the team. Because otherwise, again, why bring him in the first place, right? But I do think then, if you're doing that, we've obviously got to make sure that the support is there around him as well. We know the CEO has stepped aside, etc. So the rest of the Ulster branch has to be built up to make sure that he has the best support that he can going forward. But let's come back again to this season. So Ulster, they're in 7th place, and they've been, we still have, obviously Richie Murphy has come in there, but we still don't feel like he's completely stamped himself on the team. And that probably, the thing is, the reason why I want to see him next year, that wouldn't happen until next year anyway. There aren't enough games left to feel for, he can absolutely have an impact on the players, but I don't think he can completely change the style of play to the way he'd like to play in that time. I think he's got to kind of, come up with a compromise between, what systems are there already, tweaking them a little bit, but he can't completely make wholesale changes on it. So, and because of that, I think it makes Ulster a little more vulnerable than maybe you would expect in this game, because you've got Scarlets in 14th place, Ulster in 7th, Ulster going over there. Yes, it might be, previously at least you would think it might be a tight game, for maybe 60 odd minutes, but Ulster should have enough to pull away in the end. Whereas now with Ulster, you're not sure whether they do have that extra bit in the tank to actually pull away. So it makes this, I think, a very interesting game. And it's another one where, we talked about so many teams where the outcome of a game this weekend could have huge implications for the rest of the season. This is another one for Ulster. You look at this and you think, yep, that's an Ulster win. But there's more potential here, I think, for the favoured team compared to all the three games we've seen so far. Bulls Warriors is different. I think that those two are very closely matched. But certainly compared to the Stormers or Edinburgh, Ulster look the more vulnerable of those teams. So they've got to deliver an 80-minute performance, or the Scarlets could catch them out in this one. If you look at the form book between these guys, so Scarlets, they've won 1 of their last 7. So you'd look at that again, you think, well, they're not going to win this one either. And Ulster have won 4 of their last 7. They have won the last 2 in a row, which is more consistent than they've been for a while. But stretching that to 3 would still be a big step for them. So I do again have reservations about Ulster in this one, but I'm going to go for an Ulster win. But I think it's going to be a little bit shaky at times for them. Okay, so on to the next one then. We got the Sharks versus Benneton, and the two teams that were actually in semi-final action at the weekend in the Challenge Cup. Benneton got knocked out by Gloucester. Sharks with that brilliant win against Clermont, and now we're in that kind of situation where Benneton currently in 8th place, Sharks in 13th. But if Sharks win that competition and if Benneton finish in 8th, the Sharks would take their spot in the Champions Cup next year. So I think a lot of the teams who are in and around that position, even though you would think as a URC fan, you might be cheering on the URC team in the final, a lot of them won't be, because potentially it denies their team a chance of Champions Cup rugby, and that's fair enough. But yeah, Sharks versus Benneton is 13th versus 8th, and this is at Kings Park. So Sharks, a little bit of revival recently. Obviously they've had that run in Europe as well. Making a final is fantastic. So the first South African team to make a European final as well. So nobody can take that away from them. Whatever happens in the final, they've got that credited to their name. Benneton did really well to make it to a semi-final, and having to battle on both fronts as well. And actually, of the teams that were in, the 4 teams that were in those semi-finals, Benneton actually the only team with a realistic chance of making the playoffs in their respective league. So fair play to them being competitive in 2 competitions the way they have been this season. So we're going to have a look at the form book. So Sharks have won 3 of the last 7, and they've actually won 3 of the last 4. So you can see recently, it has been very recent that they've come into some form. Benneton have also won 3 of the last 7, but it's 2 of the last 6 and 2 of the last 3 that they've won as well. So it's kind of close on form between them overall. But I think the Sharks are the team who certainly have been on more of an upward trend compared to Benneton. But Benneton's still in that 8th place, and they know that, again, because it's so tight in the league, they've got to win this one to maintain that. Otherwise, they're definitely going to drop outside of the top 8, and then it's about how far do they drop and can they make that up in the last 2 rounds. So this, again, a huge game for Benneton. The Sharks, in terms of for them, I've said that for the Sharks, their goal should be to finish above Cardiff, who are currently in 12th place and just 2 points ahead of them. So if the Sharks win this one, potentially they would leapfrog over Cardiff this weekend, and then potentially maintain that to the end of the season. So from a team who were rock bottom of the league for such a long time, that would be a really good end to the season. And if you add in a European trophy on top of that as well, at least a European final, they definitely got that. It's a much better end to the season than it was a start. But how do you think this game is going to go? Benneton have said they've been much more competitive away from home than we've seen in recent years, but I feel like Sharks have the bit between their teeth and they're going to deliver a win in this one. But we will see some decent rugby from Benneton, especially from the likes of Menoncello in that midfield. The guy has been absolutely on fire this year, but I think it's going to be an entertaining game, but the Sharks are going to win that one. Okay, now on to our next game. So next game is it's a 5:15 kickoff. It's an Irish derby. It's Munster versus Connacht. This is 3rd versus 6th at Thomond Park. This one is on Premier Sports, also live on RTE for anyone in Ireland. Should be a cracking game. And you're looking at the table. So Munster in 3rd place, and if they win, they're putting pressure on Leinster and Glasgow above them. If they lose, the Bulls and the Stormers at least, and maybe a few others behind them, would be eyeing their position there in 3rd place as well. So a lot riding on for them. And in Connacht in 6th place on 44 points, but they also got Ulster on 44 in 7th, Benneton on 44 in 8th, Edinburgh in 9th on 43, Ospreys in 10th on 40, and the Lions in 39 points in 11th. So any one of those teams below them, if Connacht don't get any points out of this game, could potentially leapfrog Connacht. So they could go from 6th to outside the playoff places in the blink of an eye. So a lot again riding on this for both teams. Looking at it, you would think Munster, if we look at the form book, Munster, they've had that fantastic tour down in South Africa. They've won 6 of the last 7. They've won 6 on the bounce now. Connacht, decent form for them as well. They've won 5 of the last 7, but only 2 on the bounce. So Munster don't have that winning way about them now. And looking at it, you would expect a Munster win out of this one. But everybody knows with Connacht don't do what you expect them to do. So they could cause a surprise in this one. And if they do, that really would put the cat amongst the pigeons in the run in the last 2 rounds. But looking at the forms, Munster 6 on the bounce. I've got to go for a Munster win in this one, but Connacht, I think, are going to make them sweat on the win as well. Okay, so on to our next game. So it's the Lions versus Cardiff. So this is a 5:15 kickoff. It's 11th versus 12th, and this is in the Emirates Airlines Park, again on Premier Sports and URC TV. And if anybody, if you don't have these sports channels that all these games are on, I can absolutely highly recommend the URC TV package. You pay, I don't know how much I paid, it was 50 something euros maybe for the season, and you get every single game. So you can watch you can't watch every game live unless you have multiple screens, because games are on at the same time, but you can watch every single game as live, and wherever ones you want to watch live as well, you can do that too. There isn't any halftime coverage or anything like that. It's just they give you the commentary of whichever channel is covering the game, and then at halftime then it kind of goes blank, right? Which for a lot of people is probably good, because a lot of those pundits that go on those shows, they're not the best to listen to at times. So maybe an even better package for that. But yeah, I highly recommend it. It's fantastic. I've watched since I got it. You've seen how many games I covered on the channel, but that's not even touching on how many games I've actually watched on it. But it's got to be in the hundreds. And for this season already, I'd say per game that I've watched, I probably paid less than €1 per game, I would say. And by the end of the season, it certainly will be less than €1 per game. So that is a fantastic deal for anyone that doesn't have access, to these kind of more expensive monthly sports channels and stuff. But back to this one. So 11 versus 12 sounds close in the table, right? But this is actually the biggest gap in the table. So you have the Lions there in 11th place on 39 points and Cardiff in 12th place on 25. So 14 points difference between these two teams. It's by far the biggest margin between two teams for one place in the league. The next closest, we got two next closest ones, and that is, first of all, the Bulls on 51 points are 6 points ahead of the Stormers in 5th place. And then tied with that, we have the Sharks in 13th place on 23 points ahead of the Scarlets on 17 points, so 6 points gap there as well. And then just to show how tight the rest of the league is, I said it's 6 points between the Bulls in 4th place and the Stormers in 5th. It's also 6 points between the Stormers in 5th place and the Lions in 11th place. So 14-point gap is just absolutely massive between these two teams. And the Lions are the last of that pack with any kind of outside hope of making the playoff places. Whereas Cardiff, we've seen them this year. They got some decent young talent come in, and they had a nice run in the middle of their season. But now it's kind of gone where they're like, things are getting away from them. They should have beaten Ulster though a few rounds ago. They should have that win to their name, and maybe that would make things look a little bit brighter for them. Because if we look at the form book, the Lions have won 3 of the last 7. So it's okay form, not brilliant form. It's certainly not the form you would want to be in going for a playoff place, but at least it's a bit better if we look at the last 5, because they've won 3 of the last 5. So that's certainly positive for them. But Cardiff, not Glasgow. Cardiff haven't won any of their last 7. So 7 defeats on the bounce. And I don't know, I haven't gone back to check how many more it is before that as well. But at least 7 defeats on the bounce for them. Again, should have won that game in Ulster, so there should be a W win there somewhere, but still it's not good reading for them. And when you look at this again, you got the Lions, who have that that incentive of keeping their playoff hopes alive, whereas Cardiff, all they really have is trying to stay ahead of the Sharks, which I think for a young team like this probably isn't as big a motivator as it maybe is for a more kind of experienced squad in the Sharks. So I think that battle, I think, is probably going to go the way of the Sharks. But Cardiff, again, they had that bounce with all these young, exciting players come in, but now I think the reality of the grind of the URC is kind of hit as well, and we're only seeing patches from them now. We're not seeing full performances from a lot of those players. So maybe now it's time to kind of refresh a little bit for next season. Maybe give some other players in the wider squad a chance too, and get that whole idea of fresh blood coming in and giving the impetus, and try and get a little kick towards the end of the season again. Because I think if they're handled well in the off season, this Cardiff team will make a step forward next year, kind of similar to the way we've seen the Ospreys do it this year. But for now, I think the Lions certainly in the better form of the two teams, and I'm going to go for a Lions win in that one. Okay, so the last game then of the weekend is Leinster, 2nd place versus Osprey in 10th. I saw, actually, it was kind of funny, in the opening for the commentary on Leinster versus Northampton. I don't know who the guy is. Somebody will know, because I know a lot of people don't like him. But the guy that does the main commentary basically had this big speech about how it was the leaders of the URC versus the leaders of the Premiership, which obviously wasn't true, because Leinster had already fallen to second place by then. So must have written that like months ago or something, or a few weeks ago. I forgot to change it. But so Leinster, we're not honestly not used to seeing them in second place in recent years, but a chance probably here, depending on obviously how things go with Glasgow, but potentially this game they would know by kickoff if a win or a bonus point win is going to be enough to send them back to the top of the table. And then if they get there, then it's going to be very hard to dislodge them. But they're playing an Ospreys team who have certainly been the best of the Welsh teams this season, and you can see that progress that they're making, through the competition. There have been times in games where last season you would have said that the Ospreys team, tight game, they're going to fall away, they're going to make mistakes, and they're going to end up losing the game. But they've had that ability to stick in there and to be right there at the end, in with a chance to win games, and that's fantastic from them. But having said that, they have had kind of in the last kind of 5 rounds a little bit of patchy form. We will look at the form. Like Leinster have won 4 of the last 7, which has got to be like the worst form we've seen Leinster in the URC era. And Ospreys have also won 4 of the last 7, which is actually decent for them. But I think the telling thing is, if we look at the last 5, Leinster have won 3 of the last 5. They have those 2 defeats, the last 2, but that was the team that they sent to South Africa. So, I'm not going to say you discount that, because it still counts towards the form. It doesn't matter whether they didn't send the top players and blah, blah, blah. There's going to be no asterisk beside that in the history books. Like Leinster have 4 losses this season, and I'm looking at the table now. There's definitely not an asterisk beside that number 4, with a little note down the bottom saying sent the second team to South Africa. So if you do that, you get what you deserve, and Leinster got what they deserve. And as a Leinster fan, I'm not going to say I'm happy they lost, but I'm happy they did get what they deserved. If that makes any sense to anyone, but in my mind it does, at least. So looking at it in terms of form, you would think that you can give maybe in the form book at least a little bit lower weighting to those losses, and think that Leinster before that were on a 4-game winning run, and now like they've got to break that losing streak, and they're at home in the RDS against an Ospreys team who have looked really good this season at times, but just now the pressure is coming on. This is the crucial time of the season, and it's kind of similar to there's a lot of teams, actually most of the teams that are down around that area now that I'm looking at the table. Like we start with actually to top the table first of all, Glasgow have got to deliver this weekend to keep their hopes of staying top alive. Then the next team in terms of just Glasgow would be one of those ones where, again, not always delivering when they should, or when they have the chance to, should I say, not when they should. Then Connacht would be the next one for me, just so inconsistent. Ulster, because of the all that's been going on there. Benneton, again, that whole thing of they're getting better, but can they maintain that as well? Can again deliver when needed. Edinburgh, similar as well, fell off last season. Can they sneak in this season? And then you got Ospreys and the Lions as well. So all those teams around them are all in the same kind of boat as Ospreys, and somebody is going to deliver, and that's going to get them in ahead of all of those other teams that I mentioned. But can Ospreys do it in the RDS is the question. I think that first of all, one thing, because I will forget to mention otherwise, and somebody will probably mention it in the comments, and I always appreciate that when people do, because it's always good to have, first of all, it's always good to have comments, because then you get to chat with people, which is great. And the second thing is, it's always good to have people adding to the information that you've given as well, so that there's more. For me, sometimes something I've missed, or maybe something I knew and I forgot to put in the video, or didn't have time to put in the video. Whatever it is, it just adds a little bit extra to it, and it's brilliant. But what I was going to say is, can Ospreys do it against Leinster at this stage now in the RDS? So I think they can certainly make it a little tougher on Leinster. But the thing I was going to say was, because I went on that whole thing, right, and didn't complete the circle, but now we're completing the circle. So Leo Cullen has said that he's going to pick strong Leinster teams to the end of the season. I don't think it means that he's going to pick the Champions Cup semi-final team with other top players coming back in from injury as and when. I don't think you're going to see them playing 3 rounds in a row, but I think what you are going to see is elements of that team playing in every single round. So we're going to see a mix of what I call the usual URC team and the Champions Cup team, which I think is fantastic, because last year they didn't do that, and they paid a huge price for it as well. They almost lost the semi-final as well, because the fact that those players hadn't played in 3 weeks, and they were just training all the time. Training gave them a great start, it didn't give them a great finish. So I'm very happy for that. Doesn't mean that Leinster are going to go on and do the double or get any trophy at all, but at least it's different from last year, and I think it's the better approach. But because of that, because I think there are going to be players in the team that's picked for this game that will be able to lift Leinster when Ospreys do kind of potentially cause them a bit of a wobble, that Leinster are going to win, and it's probably going to be a bonus point win too. So because of that as well, Glasgow really do have to get something out of that game against the Bulls, or they're going to drop back down to second, and potentially have Munster and the Bulls chomping at their heels as well. So that's a look ahead to the games of the weekend. This one's come out a little bit early. If you didn't watch my Champions Cup stuff, I'll just quickly explain the reason why. My wife is coming over tomorrow, and we're going to spend a few days together. She's going to be here for the weekend as well, and so we get to spend some time together. And I'm going to take a break then from doing rugby videos for that period, and then I'll be back on Monday then for a review of the weekend's actions as well. So there won't be any individual game reviews this weekend, but there will be the round review that I normally do on the Monday. So it's going to be it's only going to be a few days, but I'm just kind of so used to putting videos out at a weekend. So but it's also just going to be great to have a little bit of a break, honestly, because it is a lot of work, and I'm not like, woe is me. As I said before, I really enjoy making these videos, and I'm really grateful that people actually watch them. So it's not woe is me. It's just it will be just nice to have a weekend just to, because I will get to watch some of the rugby, even though I won't be covering it. But anyone who has done these types of videos will tell you that watching a game of rugby, and watching a game of rugby knowing that you got to take all these notes because you're going to cover the game in a video or wherever, or talk about it on a podcast or wherever it is. Completely changes how you enjoy the game. You can't really relax because you got to, which player was that, and look at this interesting thing, and blah blah blah. So yeah, it will be nice just to watch rugby at the weekend. Not too much of it again, because I want to spend as much time with my wife as possible. But as I said, we'll be back on Monday, and I hope to see you guys then.